We'll be going over the 3 main ways to stop massive arterial bleeding. What is up, everybody? This is Jay with Prepared Citizens. Welcome to the training camp. Today we're going to be doing some stop the bleed. We're going to be going over the 3 main ways to stop massive arterial bleeding. But before we jump into that, I want to let everyone know this is an online video. It is great information, but it in no way takes the place of hands-on training. Always seek out some good hands-on training and learn how to use this equipment hands-on, and it's going to take you a long way. So this is tip of the iceberg. This is to get you pointed in the right direction, so you're going to know what to expect and how you need to get your mindset going to use this equipment. So we're going to go into the 3 main ways to stop bleeding. Before I jump into those, I just want to let everyone know, to get us all on the same page. Some of you may or may not know this. Main arterial bleeding can come from 3 different types of main arteries. The first being your carotid arteries. They go through your neck. In your arms, you have what's called brachial arteries. And then in your leg, and also what our little sample here, our dummy here, is going to be representing your femoral arteries within your leg. So my trainer right here, this is made by Humimic, and these guys are awesome. This is probably one of the best trainers, in my opinion, on the market. I can actually hook IVs up to this. I got fake blood. We're not going to do that for video purposes, but if you come take a class with me, we may do that. It's definitely adds to the fun. So today we're going to be covering a few different ways to stop bleeding. Okay, there's 3 different ways. Anytime, I want to remind everybody, anytime you come up on a scene and you're that first responder, I want to remind you something. No matter how chaotic the scene is, there's a few things you need to think about. Number 1, remain calm. Do not run. Do not get yourself winded getting there. Come up calm and collected. You can walk fast if you need to, but always keep your mind clear, where you can keep your focus and situational awareness wide open, okay? Just as long as you're trained, you know what you need to do, remain as calm as possible. You want to keep your heart rate down. You don't want to start getting tunnel vision and things like that when a lot of stuff could be going on. So that's one thing. The other thing, and probably the most important thing, is safety. Your safety, the responders, the first responders' safety. So if you're the first responder, your safety is priority. I get it. We want to save other people, even if it's a family member or something like that. I'm going to use 2 different scenarios real quick. Obviously, if you take a training class, you're going to deep dive into this stuff. But for YouTube purposes, real quick. First being active shooter. Okay. The number 1 priority is your safety. You don't just run out onto the X to try to help someone. The first priority in that situation is going to be eliminating the threat. That's the first priority. You do not treat anyone till that threat's eliminated. If you could get someone safely off the X, maybe, but the threat needs to be eliminated so no more casualties are going to come up. Because if they get you trying to help someone, now your medical kit is now going to be used to help you and not someone else. So you then became a liability to the situation and not an asset. Scenario number 2 would be a car accident. These are unfortunately fairly common when arriving up on a car accident. Someone needs medical care. chances are you're going to be close to the road. So what I highly suggest is getting the patient or victim off the X. Get away from the road, and this includes you. You do not need to be trying to treat someone on the pavement because there could be other traffic. So keep yourself safe and the patient by getting off the X, okay? Safety for the first responder is the most important thing in these situations because you don't want to add to the casualties or injuries and require even more medical equipment. Again, then you'll have become a liability to the situation and not an asset. Okay, now we got that out of the way. We know the different arteries, the main arteries within us that we're going to be trying to stop the bleeding from. First and foremost, it's going to be gloves. You want to get some gloves on. You don't want to be touching other people's blood. You don't want to be touching other people's icky, sticky stuff. So we're going to wear gloves. Always glove up. No gloves, no loves. After we got our gloves on, obviously if we're already strapping some gloves on, this is probably going to be, you've probably recognized this is going to be pretty serious. And go ahead, get on the horn, get emergency services on the way. Get that higher medical coming to you. Let them know your location, what's going on. Go ahead and get higher medical on the way, because that's what we're dealing with, is trying to treat this patient to get them, keep them alive until higher medical arrives. Okay, so we're going to start with direct pressure. Direct pressure is usually going to be your number one thing you want to try. It's going to be the most common thing you'll probably run into. So we're going to go with that. This here is compressed gauze. This is how your compressed gauze will come, and it will all come out in this. So what you're going to do, it's not all just going to shoot out like that. You'll just pull it out as you need it, but it is a trick to it. So when applying direct pressure, you're going to take however much gauze is going to very, very well, if anything, you may actually want to use it all to try to help soak up a lot of the blood. But direct pressure is just going to be literally as it says, and you're going to take both hands, put as much, all your body weight on that wound. And normally, that will do it. Now, you can also use an Israeli bandage, an emergency bandage. These come in the FX, and they have a big gauze pad. And these come in many different shapes and sizes, but if you needed to, for whatever reason, if there was someone else that needed medical attention, something else you had to do in that moment, you can always use this Israeli bandage, and you can wrap it up while you do something else. And in that case, you will be able to help someone else, while this keeps pressure, constant pressure applied to your patient, to one patient at least. Now, again, in-person training, not going to go over necessarily the specific technique on all this stuff, because a lot of people, I've seen through all the classes I've taken, a lot of different techniques, and they all work. They're all good techniques. But the instructions, the basic instructions for these, like I sell, are on the back of it, which is really nice. The big thing is to secure it. That way, your bleeding is controlled. Obviously, you don't want to walk away and this thing start bleeding. Apply all your might to this thing until you know the bleeding has stopped. And that is a couple of different ways to apply direct pressure. So you yourself can do it, or if you have an Israeli bandage or an emergency trauma bandage, all the different names they give these things, use one of those for direct pressure. the second way to stop massive bleeding is going to be wound packing. Wound packing is a technique. There is a technique to it that works. Everyone I have trained with, and this comes from 18 Deltas, paramedics, SWAT medics, a lot of guys that kind of have done this stuff before in real scenarios, not just training. So, I don't consider myself the expert. I learn from the experts, and I like to pass this knowledge on to you. So, when it comes to wound packing, we're going to take this exit wound here, as obviously this wound needs to be packed. This thing is huge. It would be gushing blood, which is why you need your gloves. Every single person that has taught me wound packing, you get the end of the gauze, and you're going to make like this little ball. You're going to make a little ball. You're going to feel, because the wound's going to be big enough, you can feel in here, and you're going to feel for that pressure, that blood coming out. You're going to feel right where it's coming out. It's like the end of a water gun or something. And that ball you just made, you're going to shove it up against it. And you're going to keep pressure on that artery. You're going to maintain pressure. And there, again, is a technique to this. And you're going to work it in there. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Alright. We're going to get us a little ball made up. We're going to find where that pressure is, where all the blood is coming out from that artery. We're going to take this ball, we're going to find it, and we're going to keep pressure on it. I'm going to apply pressure with the opposite hand, get on top of it with my other hand. Constant pressure is always on it. And we're going to pack this entire wound until it is full. We don't want to be able to put any more in there. Now, this is where some folks will tell you that the hemostatic gauze is better, and I'm not going to argue. But I will say, from every paramedic, every 18 Delta, which is only 2 of those guys, but every paramedic I've talked to, SWAT medic, and even most studies, there has not been enough difference to say that the hemostatic is just so much better. Hemostatic gauze, for those of you that don't know, is extremely expensive. Whereas typical compressed gauze, $5 to $6 or less in some cases. And the hemostatic gauze is anywhere from like $40 to $50. Now, we're getting this wound pretty full. Once we get it full, we're going to do our first technique and just put everything on top of it and apply direct pressure. And if you have more work to do, if there's more people needing help, if you got an Israeli bandage, this is where you would wrap that Israeli bandage on and let it keep the direct pressure. Okay, so that is technique number 2 for when the wound is severely opened and you have to pack it. Pressure, just pressure won't work. Last but not least, the one everyone's been waiting on, the tourniquet. Option number 3, the tourniquet. I'm not going to go into different styles of tourniquets. I've got plenty of videos on that. Please go watch those if you're wondering. But we are going to use the OG. the North American Rescue Cat Tourniquet. So, let's say this chainsaw laceration up here, this is down here close to the knee. So, now we're going to apply a tourniquet above the wound. Normally, I like to just tell people, and this is, some people argue with this, some people don't, I don't know. High and tight. That's what I've always been told by all the people I've mentioned, and it has not failed anyone that I know of. So, most, technical terms, I think the Red Cross, they train to do 2 or 3 inches above the wound, which I'm not going to argue with that either. So, just at least be 2 or 3 inches above the wound, but most TCCC classes similar to mine, they always are going to tell you high and tight. And people, when I tell you tight, so what I like to do, if I'm applying this to someone else, even if I am applying it to myself, I always want the tail to be towards me. That way I can pull it. It's a lot easier to pull than if it's off, like say on this side of their leg, and I'm trying to pull it that way. It's a lot easier to pull it to me, if that makes sense. So when you get the tourniquet in position, you want to make sure that tail is towards you. So let's move it around a little bit so y'all can see it a little better. A little bit more maybe. So that's very important. Come on, guys. So you want to be able to pull it towards you. Okay. And once that baby, you're going to apply 95% or more if you can. 95% or more of your pressure from how tight that tourniquet is going to come from that initial pull. Okay. And then you can start the windlass. Then you can start your windlass. Now, a lot of people are like, well, how tight do I go? Well, you shouldn't be able to turn this windlass much. Maybe one full, if anything. That's pretty doggone tight. If it's sitting there, if you get 3 rotations out of this, you've done it wrong. A lot of people that's never had hands-on training do not understand how tight you have to put a tourniquet for full arterial inclusion. So it's very, very important with a cat tourniquet, at least. The tightness that's applied to it is going to come from the initial pull, and then you're just going to finish cinching it down with the windlass. If you can pull that tail back through. Usually if it's on arms, you can do that. A lot of times on legs, probably not going to be able to do that. So like in this case, just the tail barely made it back around. So it's pretty much at its limit. So you can go ahead and put your time strap over it. Now, I have no problem with people writing the time. I think that's good if you want to. But it's one of those things that's not like make or break what the hospital's going to do. Okay? Here in the United States, medical care is, you're going to see a doctor. I mean, in a worst case scenario, a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, normally. Now, if it's anything other than a normal civilian type situation, like if dudes are in combat, that's a real thing, having to know the time, because it could be, as long as they get the bleeding stopped, they're good to go, but it still could be, 7 hours before they get them flown to a doctor somewhere in a combat zone. So on the civilian side, I don't stress the time, but it is 100% A-okay and still a good thing if you do it. Just being a little extra thorough if you want to, but I'm just letting you know it's not a make it or break it type thing. And that's going to be when you apply a tourniquet, is when you actually have the room to do that. Now that we've talked about applying these methods, to this trainer's thigh, I want to talk more specifically about the when and where. So, tourniquets are something that's going to be used for extremities. And it's also going to be used when you have the room available to you. So if I have an injury down here on my arm, or even up here, I can still get a tourniquet up here. Now, what if I took an injury like right here in the armpit or something, or maybe up in here? What are you going to do? Well, that's when you would go to packing and pressure, is in these. So basically, when you can't get a tourniquet on an extremity because of the location, which is normally going to be in junction points, crotch area, armpit area. Those are going to be when you want to apply packing. For the carotid artery, it's pretty much obviously going to be packing and pressure. Sometimes you probably wouldn't even be able to pack well. You may just have to, like, in this case, what's his name? Kentucky Ballistics. You should go watch that video. That dude actually had an injury happen on his channel, and something split his carotid artery, or opened it up heavily. He actually had to hold his thumb. Luckily, he was prior law enforcement. He knew what to do, so that was awesome. That was a great example of dude doing everything he was supposed to do. But he literally used his thumb to hold that carotid artery from bleeding out, keep himself from bleeding out. So that's an example too. If you can do some packing, go for it. But sometimes that's all you got. That's all you got. I hope this makes sense, guys. Again, please get hands-on training. In training classes, we can go, or any instructor can go a lot more in depth. There's a lot more time to go and deep dive into this stuff. What I'm telling you is this much of what you need to know. If you want, please pick up a FAC. These are awesome medical kits that I sell in the Prepared Citizens TG.com website, or my online store. This is the reason I started doing this stuff, because I want to get this information to as many people as I so possibly can. So with that being said, also consider subscribing, sharing this to people, showing this to people you love, and go get some training together. My wife and I like to go train together. We did an immediate action medical course, a tactical response together. Some of the most fun we've had ever. Training with your family is awesome, and it challenges each other, and you have fun at the same time. So it's really cool. So I think that covers everything I want to go over today. I believe so. Guys, please get training. Hit the subscribe button, comment, all that stuff. Shoot me some questions. Please consider going shopping. On our website, I got a lot of good stuff there. When I sell these, I also include my training manual with them. Again, hands-on training, but I love the manual. I put a lot of stuff in there. It goes over how to use everything in this kit, including what we went over today. So, guys, thank you so much for making it this far. I really appreciate you watching. God bless you. God bless your families. And always remember to be an asset to those around you, not a liability. God bless, and I'll catch you on the next one.